They gave me this thing and I don't know what to do with it. I keep eating it. I've never had a mic before because I am loud. Welcome to my final resting place here in the Hook and Ladder Graveyard Cemetery. My name is Alonzo Mitchell Bove, and all my family and friends call me Alonzo. I was born here in Gretna, November the 4th in 1902. I was raised by my aunt and uncle because I was orphaned at birth by Leo and Ernestine Robichaud. I married the lovely Myrtle Froelich, and we had two daughters. We had Doris and Audrey. Now Doris will be through here sometime tonight, so y'all watch out. We lived in a little house over on across from the jail on 4th Street, where Jefferson Furniture was for many years. Audrey, as I said, will be through here any time now. So she is a pistol. She's 92 years old and she's still running like she's a teenager. She's a mess. My wife, Myrtle, used to tell her, Audrey, you're always joining something. The devil's never going to be able to catch up with you. And we know that's true today. Going back to our little house on 4th Street, we lived there about as long as we could take it. Seems that our house was only about 24 inches away from the bar room next door. And so we kept complaining to the cops about all the noise all night, but they didn't care. That's where our boys in blue got their free booze all the time. So eventually we had to move so we could get some sleep. Well, now I've told you a little bit about my family life. I'll tell you a little bit about my railroad life and how important the railroad was for the city of Gretna. Back in 1853, the first railroad was started in Algiers at the Algiers terminal, and that made Gretna a very busy railroad town for many years. This area of Gretna, this area here, was named Mechanicsham before it was incorporated in Gretna when Gretna became a city in 1912. So the very first railroad on this side of the river started in Algiers going west. Algiers to Gretna across Bayou Lafourche and ended its run at Brochure City, which is today Morgan City. So the railroad yard was behind the new fire station, over behind McDonoughville and Gouldsboro. Back in there, behind the new fire station, was a very important railroad yard for this side. It had a switch yard, it had a roundhouse, and it had a lot of spurs over there. So that was a very important part for the city. Many of the homes, the new houses built in Gretna, or even the houses around today, were built as boarding houses in those days for men coming into Gretna for the lucrative railroad jobs. So that really did help Gretna grow a lot. There was no bridges across the Mississippi River in those days. So the trains coming from the east came to the river. They had to be disassembled and brought over one car at a time on transfer barges. They had to be brought across the Mississippi River and then reassembled on this side. Not only was it long and tedious, but it was very dangerous. That's why it was such a celebration when the Huey P. Long Railroad Bridge was built and opened in December of 1935. And me, with the best Leonardo DiCaprio act I could do, stood on top of one of the freight cars as the first train crossed the river on the new bridge. So I was bragging about that to my wife Myrtle, and oh my goodness, that set her off. She said, how could a grown man be so stupid? I think I've heard that one in real life too, you know? I worked for Southern Pacific for 49 years. 49 years. There's not too many jobs today where anybody stays on the same job for 49 years. I started out working for Southern Pacific when I was 14 years old. And my first job at Southern Pacific was a gopher. I don't know in the railroad terms if you know what a gopher was, but people would holler, Alonzo, I need a hammer. Alonzo, bring me some bolts. Alonzo, I need a wrench. Well, I would go for it. So that was my first job. I was a go for it. That's a really weak joke, but anyway, it's my try, you know. So eventually I stayed on and had become a regular worker. But to become a regular worker, there was called an extra board, where when the regular workers, and it was kind of in parentheses, regular workers didn't show up, you would go in and they would pull your name off the extra board to fill the slots. So every morning, there was no phones in that day, for me, so we couldn't call in. So every morning, or every day, early in the morning, I'd get on my bike, I'd ride down to the river, I'd catch the ferry that let me off at the Esplanade Avenue there by the French Market to go check in. That was just to see if I would have a job for that day. If there wasn't a job opening that day, I came home and started all over again the next day. Eventually, I worked my way up to switchman at Jack's Brewery. Now that was a pretty sweet gig, because after we finished a job at the Jack's Brewery moving stuff around, they'd give us free beer to bring home as a nice thing. So I worked all over the New Orleans area. I eventually worked up to be head switchman here in New Orleans. I had an offer to be yard master, but I didn't want that. That was kind of a political thing. We had a bunch of guys. We were all a close-knit bunch of guys, and everybody looked out for everybody else, and we kind of wanted to keep that together, so I stayed as the head switchman. It was a great run. We really enjoyed it. So now I don't want to hold y'all at this railroad crossing here too long, because somebody's going to get a call from the sheriff. So I got to move y'all along now. But thank y'all for coming down tonight, and God bless.
Alonzo Bove was portrayed by Peter DeBrock. This is Peter's 5th year with us.
Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all coming.
All right, remember, watch your step. You got flashlights, so you